Now, Brazil's Supreme Court has been evacuated and a man has been found dead after 2 explosions outside the building. Officials say the man killed himself after trying and failing to enter the court building. It's not clear what the motive is, but they suspect suicide. The explosions took place in one of the most sensitive locations in Brasilia, the square, which is the site of the Supreme Court, the President's Palace and Congress. The first blast was in a car park near the court, the second moments later at the entrance to the court itself. There are heightened security worries in Brazil as it's due to host a G20 summit next week in Rio de Janeiro. Now, the U.S. ambassador to Mexico has said the country's strategy to tackle violent crime has failed. Ken Salazar was criticizing the hugs, not bullets policy of the former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, which he said had left Mexico with a very serious security problem. The Mexican Foreign Ministry has sent a diplomatic note to the U.S. Embassy. Now, researchers say cases of diabetes worldwide have doubled from 7 to 14% since 1990. They found that while diabetes case numbers had exploded, treatment rates have stagnated. Almost half of those with the condition are living with it untreated. The study also outlined widening global inequalities, saying more prevention as well as detection is needed in low and middle income countries. Lack of treatment of diabetes can lead to amputations, heart disease, kidney damage, vision loss, and premature death. With more on this, Arise Health correspondent Lijah Waperah joins me now live in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes.
First of all, just briefly tell us what diabetes is. I mean, it's a chronic disease, isn't it?
Yes, it is very chronic. It's a disease of life. That's what I like to term it. Even though health experts have tried to explain, they do not know the actual cause of it because it's basically genetics, like it plays a serious role in diabetes. Now, diabetes is chronic in the sense that it's a disease associated with having too much glucose in the blood vessels, and that can, if it's too much over time not treated, it can lead to, heart diseases, kidney failure. There's also the issue of vision loss, like you said, and I'm sure you've heard before now that there are people who, depending on the type of diabetes, because there are different types, the particular type that one could have, and injuries can hardly heal. That is how terrible it is because there's lack of insulin in the blood.
Sounds scary. And this report has found that the number of people living with diabetes has doubled in the last 30 years. Rates exacerbated, as you hinted there, with unhealthy lifestyles and an aging population. And apparently, more than 800 million people now have the disease worldwide.
Yes. The thing about it is, like I said, is a disease of lifestyle. People are now on the move. People want to get jobs done quickly. So it's easy for people to just sit back and order foods from food ordering apps and, sometimes just get things done quickly. Jongs, there are, industries or companies that manufacture some of these foods as well. So people, imagine someone who's working from morning up until evening and you don't have the time to go to their offices that don't have kitchens where you can cook. So it's easy to just order some of these foods online.
And a lot of these foods are processed.
Yes, they are processed foods. Yeah. So you have to, get them, quickly. And after the COVID year, people started relying more on, people can get their jobs done from. Yes, right. So that makes, the disease to double over time. And it's lifestyle, like I said, it's just a lifestyle disease.
And whilst these cases have exploded, treatment rates, we understand, have stagnated.
Right.
And, with almost the people who have diabetes, a lot of the people living with it untreated. How dangerous is that?
That's quite dangerous. Having, is like keep storing something or hiding something that maybe it to decay, and if you don't get it treated with time, it worsens. So for something such as too much sugar in the blood, it's going to affect the heart and loss of vision and all of that. So it's that bad. And, you know, early detection, as health experts would say, is very, very important when it comes to diabetes.
Absolutely. And it's apparently hitting low and middle income countries the hardest. Presumably, Nigeria falls into that category.
Yes, sadly, Nigeria is the highest in sub-Saharan Africa when it comes to diabetes. And for low-income countries, the issue is fragile healthcare system. We keep talking about it all the time. And it's really important to also see how we can, you know, fund the healthcare system. You know, sometimes when you talk to some of these health experts, they tell you this is the reason why they're leaving the country. There are people who are in rural areas who don't have accessibility to quality healthcare. The staples that we have in Nigeria are basically sugar staples. You know, you have the yams, the rice, and all of that. So they are staples that do encourage, you know, things like this. And it's the economy in low-income country is really tough. Not everyone can afford, you know, a proper balanced diet. So it's really an issue of, you know, funding of the healthcare system. Balanced diet is an issue because not everyone can afford 3 square meals, not to talk of even 2 square meals and all of that. So that contributes to the issue. Fixing the healthcare system in low-income countries, having the issue of, you know, healthcare like schemes that could help, you know, Nigerians who are unable to afford it to be able to access quality.
Well, I'm going to come to that again in a minute. But I mean, you made some very stark comments there. And I wanted you to emphasize that again, because this is so important. I mean, what happens if you don't treat it? It gets as bad as having your legs amputated.
Because you have issues of foot problems as well. Their legs get amputated, and that's why they tell people, I mean, like you asked earlier, you have a problem, it's better. Some people rely on herbs. You know, there are people who are not enlightened or educated. There are people who don't have this education in, you know, urban centers or have access to maybe watch us to see or have this conversation, you know, even in English or in their, you know, spoken languages, to understand that they need to, you know, treat it early. Because, I mean, imagine having your legs amputated. That's because it gets to that stage because you don't go for checkups to see if this thing is wrong.
That's the problem,
find out what the issue is.
I mean, and before the onset of it, I mean, is there a way, for example, if you change your diet? I mean, what are the foods that are recommended? What might you eat, in other words, to stabilize yourself and not get to the point where you sort of, you know, have diabetes?
Yes, nutritionists will always recommend a balanced diet. I mean, little of everything here and there, pieces of everything here is balanced. But like I said, for low-income countries, our staples are basically carbs, and carbs are sugars. So what we can do is have those balanced diet, but then
a lot of vegetables.
Vegetables would help.
Yeah,
a lot
more
of
protein, less carbohydrates.
Yes, less carbs. But you know, these things are very expensive. Like I said, in Nigeria, for instance, if you go to the market, you want to buy some of these protein-based foods, it's very expensive. They talk about the administration and, you know, the government doing something to ensure that food prices are lowered so people can afford it. So that's contributory.
And of course, you mentioned bad food, but also lack of exercise.
Yes, lack of exercise.
Being overweight, all that sort of thing.
Yes, sedentary lifestyle. A lot of
So those of us who sit around a lot staring at computers.
Well, that's the reason why I said after the COVID year, a lot of people decided to rely more on, okay, I can get this job done online, so it's easy to quickly just, you know, make a call and get the food ordering apps to, you know, get my food delivered. And according to a recent statistics that's in the US, I think is a global thing, millennials are, you know, ordering foods more than 90% of millennials get to order food more. So these are some of the factors that we have to consider, especially for countries such as Nigeria.
And if you think you're a millennial and you're younger, because it tends to affect people who are older, I understand the age that it affects people is getting lower and lower now.
Yes, that's exactly. So the thing with people who, so over time, It's like what you keep feeding your body. Over time, you would see, because they say you're what you eat.
Indeed.
So over time, these begin to, the product of what you've been eating or feeding your body begins to manifest. And that's the reason why you see it, the age bracket is beginning to go low and all of that. So people have to be very cautious of the kinds of food they eat. You have a balanced diet, you have proteins here and there. It's not as if you shouldn't have carbs, but then a balanced diet, especially when you know that it's a genetic issue or a genetic problem. If you see that your family line has diabetes, you have to be very careful to begin to make lifestyle changes so you don't fall in that bracket.
Elijah, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
And she is, of course, our health correspondent, Elijah Waperah there.